Hello there, Commonwealth from here. Tears of the Kingdom, as the 20th Zelda game in the mainline series, has a lot in common with the 5th Zelda title. Coincidentally, it also turns 25 years old this year. Both have a humanoid Ganondorf rising to a position of power and establishing him as the villain in the beginning of the game. Both play around with the concepts of time, both in its story and gameplay. And furthermore, both are games that came out late in the life cycle of their respective systems. But first be sure to leave a like, as we are going for 2023 likes in this one, and subscribe plus press that notification bell to get us past 333,333 subscribers by May 12th to unlock our Zelda Switch OLED giveaway. No Zelda game has been as influential and at the same time so well paced and balanced as Ocarina of Time. What it did in 1998 was not only transitioning the Zelda franchise to the third dimension, but also introducing a number of new rules for Zelda. Number 1. Time is no obstacle, as you can now move back and forth throughout the games, well, at least in most of the 3D games. Number 2. The villain is no longer a wild boar, but an evil royal. And number 3. The creators, the 3-colored golden goddesses who are both the blessing and curse of Hyrule. Throughout the 3 trailers of 2019, 2021 and 2022, we have seen several callbacks to Ocarina of Time in Tears of the Kingdom. Princess Zelda, who despite her best intentions, messes up and leads Ganondorf to power, forcing Link to clean up with the power of time and anime on his side. Time is a weapon like no other, but up to this point we have only seen it freezing objects and being able to impact it with physics, not actually dial it back and forth. To the degree that the main mechanic of the game appears to be time through the hand of time, and not being afraid of the concept of time in its gameplay and story is key to achieving something greater, being better than Breath of the Wild. Some may say that in this regard Tears of the Kingdom is the new Majora's Mask, the direct sequel to a groundbreaking Zelda game set in Hyrule. But I disagree, as this is a sequel also set in Hyrule, following the 3 rules of Zelda set by Ocarina of Time. Time, Ganondorf as villain from the beginning of the game, and the golden goddesses of red, blue and green being very influential, both when it comes to the story and gameplay, and in not being only focused on Hylia. Truly, this is the new Ocarina of Time as we are back in Hyrule. Then again, the same was the case with Twilight Princess. But that was a game that the Now series producer Eiji Aonuma and much of the Zelda team at that time didn't want to make, while Tears of the Kingdom represents the complete opposite. A game that the current Zelda team, headed by Mr. Aonuma and director Hidemaru Fujibayashi, wanted as DLC, but simply saw too much potential in and took the next 6 years to turn it into a game that would at last challenge the bits that Ocarina of Time has over Breath of the Wild, namely storytelling, pacing, dungeons, and bosses. Fittingly enough, the same applied to Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess with their high dungeon count, 7 and 8, just like Ocarina of Time, which topped them with 9, but still far above Breath of the Wild's 5 in the main game if you even count them as dungeons, since even Majora's Mask had 4 massive ones compared to the Divine Beasts. The lack of actual dungeons was clearly the most baffling change, and has probably been ever since on top of what to address for the sequel. Even so, the Zelda team are likely doing it a little bit differently than some might expect. Instead of going back to the linearity that we know from Skyward Sword, Ocarina of Time might actually serve as an inspiration. As in the 5th Zelda game made by Nintendo, you could do several of the temples out of order. This applied both to the child and adult temples. In fact, the Spirit Temple wasn't even supposed to be the last temple prior to Hyrule Castle, as seen in the placement of the Spirit and Shadow medallions in the Chamber of Sages. Speaking of, could the chamber return with the deceased spirits of King Rome, the 4 champions, and even Princess Zelda if she is dead in Tears of the Kingdom? And with Link, 7, just like the number of tears surrounding this figure. Yes, another potential Ocarina connection, and the Zelda team's tease that this, not Breath of the Wild, is the new Ocarina of Time when it comes to dungeons. But naturally, the dungeons might be in different locations, as we don't want a repeat of A Link Between Worlds to A Link to the Past. The Zelda team is probably aware of their dungeon mistake in Breath of the Wild, and that is probably why they gave us the final trial in the Champions Ballad. Speaking of, what else when it comes to its gameplay is Ocarina truly iconic for? Its bosses. Goma, King Dodongo, Barinade, Phantom Ganon, Volvagia, Morpha, Bongo Bongo, and Twin Robe. Nearly all of these had far more character and build-up than any of the Blights. Master Koga might have been seen as an exception. Calamity Ganon was a feeling of been there, done that, while Dark Beast Ganon was the biggest final boss joke in the history of the franchise. Once again, Monk Mos Koshia felt like an apology for Dark Beast Ganon, but that was through paid DLC, and hence the bosses of Breath of the Wild did not have anything in common with Ocarina of Time, as we only battled spawns of and then a puppet, and never the puppet master, who was saved for Tears of the Kingdom, an unprecedented move in any Zelda title where you always face the master before you are done with the game, or linked games as was the case with the Oracle titles. Do you see what we are pointing to here? The right quality and quantity in one, as Breath of the Wild, not counting DLC, lacked both in the dungeons and bosses departments. Ocarina of Time set the standard here 25 years ago, and Skyward Sword brought it close to perfection 12 years ago. Now Tears of the Kingdom will pick up the drop torch and light the cauldron of Zelda dungeon perfection, but without forcing us on 100% linearity. But how? By expanding on the alternative run concept from 1998. Well, that covers dungeons and bosses, but what else did Ocarina of Time have despite being the first 3D Zelda title? Great enemy variety. Another target for the Zelda team when making Tears of the Kingdom. Despite having a massive open world, the AI ambition of Breath of the Wild severely limited the number of enemy types in-game and resorted to the controversial coloring system from red to silver and gold in the DLC. Naturally, this one goes back to Breath of the Wild's world pretty much serving as a dungeon with its own bosses and enemies, as most Zelda enemies of the past lurked in the dungeons. But this list is still embarrassing compared to Ocarina with its massive limitations, as Breath of the Wild had no iron knuckles, no dodongos, pose, or even sculptures. No underwater enemies as there was no underwater gameplay. And yes, Ocarina of Time's underwater gameplay was primitive, but also groundbreaking for a 3D adventure game, or 2D one for that matter, as underwater gameplay had in the Zelda series only been experimented with in 1993's Link's Awakening prior to the first 3D and fifth Zelda game in 1998. We are now in 2023, 25 years later, and now we demand underwater gameplay in an open world / open air title after Ocarina of Time managed to do it in an open zone 3D game in the previous millennium. Not decade, millennium. Let that sink in for a minute, as we couldn't properly do that in 2017. Alright, we have saved the best for the last, the storytelling and pacing. Breath of the Wild's non-linearity and freedom was its greatest attribute, but creating a better storytelling experience doesn't mean that we need to go all the way back to the ultra-linear structure and nature found in Skyward Sword, since Ocarina of Time exists with its semi-non-linear structure, which does not break the pacing and storytelling structure of the game. 1998 provides the perfect template to expand from. Alternative non-linearity and freedom that doesn't scare away the open-world fan player. But then again, in which other open world games can you go straight to fight the final boss? Not many, that is for sure, and by combining the Master Sword into something brand new in the logo of the game, it is clear what is one of the key objectives, but this one doesn't have to be linear. Instead, we could gradually be building the sword up, but not in a fixed order as we did in Skyward Sword, but rather in the way we could free sages in Ocarina of Time, or the non-linear option of the Earth and Wind Temple in the Wind Waker, where we restore the power to the Master Sword in whatever order we pleased. Very likely, Tears of the Kingdom will provide the story we all desire and are used to in titles where Ganondorf is the established bad guy, though with a little more freedom than some of these titles offered. Much like Ocarina of Time when one thinks about it, a story in the now, not 100 years ago or just in the past. We need to play the story, not watch replays of it. See heartbreaking moments followed by immediate action. That is what Zelda should be all about, with different story beats in different layers and regions, and with twists and shocks that will truly cement the position of this game forever. The more one thinks about it, the fragmented structure of Breath of the Wild for its memory images was very reminiscent of Majora's Mask, where you only got a little by completing the main quest, but then got so much more understanding of the world surrounding us and the characters in it by going out of your way to complete the side quests. Similarly, in both cases, you don't get the true ending until doing this objective, though the payoff is far greater in Majora's case. In other words, we have been wrong in assuming and comparing Breath of the Wild to Ocarina of Time, as it is more of a modern-day Majora's Mask, with its lack of dungeons, more fragmented and hidden story, and superb gameplay. Hence, Tears of the Kingdom is likely not the new Majora's Mask. It is the new Ocarina of Time, blended with Skyward Sword, as that is the first game of Red Power in this 3D trilogy, where Breath of the Wild was Blue Wisdom and Tears of the Kingdom is Green Courage. A game that remains on the surface of Hyrule, but also goes above and below it, with a solid and likely more linear story than Breath of the Wild. A game that values the heritage of the games prior to it by improving what they brought to the table, not reinventing the wheel and removing the franchise's crown jewels for the sake of shaking things up. And that is why this game is a love letter to Zelda fans and Breath of the Wild newcomers in far more ways than fighting the actual Ganondorf, the villain that has been with us in his humanoid form for almost 25 years at this point. But what do you think after going over this comprehensive Tears of the Kingdom equals Ocarina of Time, not Majora's Mask take? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell, as we're going for 333,333 subscribers by May 12th to complete the Trinity and unlock our Zelda OLED or equivalent giveaway. Last but not least, a big thanks goes to all of you for watching to the end, and to all our great patreon.com/Comeron patrons, and in particular our royal producer Charles Shash. You rock, and please enjoy one or both of these two awesome videos.